10 millimeter versus 357 Magnum, and today what I have is Speer Gold Dot. Now this is going to be kind of an interesting test because what I'm using for 357 Magnum is actually the short barreled round, and it's kind of a reduced power load. But the reason why I'm using that is because it's the only 357 Magnum cartridge that uses that large hollow cavity short barrel bullet. Virtually all semi-automatic cartridges in the Speer Gold Dot, with the exception of the 357 SIG, use that short barrel bullet. So the other 357 Magnums, all the other varieties of Gold Dot use the deep curl hollow point. So I don't think that would be quite a fair test. And the other reason why I want to test this is I've wondered for a really long time what would happen if we fired this particular round through a 4-inch barrel, because I tested this round 3 different times, very consistent velocity, and we had 1148 feet per second average out of all the tests I've done. So I'm wondering if we put it in a 4-inch barrel, will we actually get an increase in velocity or not? So I really want to test that today. And this, from what I understand, is kind of a low-end load for 10 millimeter. There's no ballistic information on the box, so I can't confirm what the numbers actually are, but we're going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy we get at the same time. And by the way, I'm shooting about here. It's about a 2-inch square. Then we're going to go through the Juggernaut box, which contains a 1 3/4 inch pack of bologna. That kind of simulates like a pectoral muscle, covered by 4 layers of denim, followed by 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard. That's really tough stuff. It's going to represent your ribs or sternum, and into water jugs to catch these bullets. And how this normally compares with ballistic gel testing is out the back of jug 1. If we crack out the back, that's about 9 inches comparison to ballistic gel after going through the bologna pack. Back of jug 2, about 12 inches. Back of jug 3, 15 inches. Back of jug 4, 18 inches, and so forth. So let's get started with the test and see how the Speer Gold Dot does between 10 millimeter and short barrel 357 Magnum in a 4-inch barrel. Let's get started. All right, first up is the 357 Magnum. We were getting 1148 feet per second average in a 2-inch barrel. So let's see if we get an increase from 1148 with this 4-inch barrel. 1190, 1175, 1188, 1230, 1279. So that's very inconsistent velocity. So maybe because it is a 4-inch barrel, something ain't quite right there. Now let's see how the 10 millimeter compares. All right, by the way, this is a 200 grain 10 millimeter. The 357 was a 135 grain. So I just replaced the spring on this conversion with an NDZ 22 pound recoil spring. So let's see what we get. $11.43, $11.09, $11.10, 1100, 1129. That spring is kind of throwing the brass in a funny way, but pretty decent velocity. Now let's see what we get when we hit the ballistic box. All right, first up is the 357 Magnum short barrel through a 4-inch barrel. Let's see what we get. All right, a lot of damage, a lot of water splash back. All right, completely pulverized this bologna pack. So that's on par with a lot of 357 Magnum rounds. Or 9mm plus P. Did a really good job. Let's see what we got in water jugs. The first jug is just absolutely destroyed, and the fiberboard is in the first jug. And what we're seeing here is definitely, this shows expansion within the bologna pack before it hit this fiberboard, because we can see kind of a star pattern where it entered and exited. So a lot of damage on that fiberboard. Now let's keep going and see what we got in the water jugs. All right, the exit through jug 1 looks pretty straight in line, not much deviation there. Same thing with jug 2. It's got a good straightforward momentum going. Impact on jug 3 is a little bit higher than what it was initially, and the exit's a little bit high on jug 3, and we have an impact in 4. And I don't think the bullet is in 4, I think it's in 3. Bullet is in 3, so we damaged 4, so that's going to equate to about 16 inches comparison to ballistics gel. And we got what I kind of expected I was going to see here. It's kind of rated for a lower velocity because those pedals are kind of fragile. So it ripped a lot of those pedals off. Very small diameter left after all of that. So those pedals would have fragmented pretty easily because going a little bit too fast out of the 4-inch barrel. So let's see what we get with the 10mm. All right, Gold Dot 10mm. Pretty similar velocity, but significantly heavier bullet at 200 grain. Let's see what this does. And I would say there's a lot more damage here than the 357 Magnum. So here's the baloney pack, and what we see is there's only about a third of it left. So when we look at the photos comparing the damage, it's not going to look quite fair for the 10mm because the baloney that was shredded to pieces actually went flying quite a big distance. I can't really find any more. So again, the fiberboard was pushed into the first jug. So let's take a look at that and see what we got in water jugs. All right, in the first jug we have the fiberboard. It's actually a lot of pieces of it shredded away. And it does appear that we have expansion. Not a huge percentage of expansion, but that's to be expected with such a heavy bullet. So let's see what we got in water jugs. All right, first jug is completely split. More damage than that particular 357 Magnum. This is average with a lot of 357 Magnums that are higher powered. Now jug 2, this is typical for a heavier bullet. It can push its energy a little bit deeper and still really shred this thing up. So a lot of damage in jug 2 compared to most rounds. Jug 3, we went right through 3. I can see an impact in 4. Don't really feel any impacts out the back of 4, so we have to take kind of an educated guess as far as ballistics gel penetration that we're probably working with 16 or 17 inches, which is pretty good. And what we have with this Golda is absolutely beautiful expansion, very consistent expansion, very nice looking pedals. Impressive. So this test, while it's not really a fair test, and I'll give it that, that short barreled bullet was definitely not designed for a 4-inch barrel. We're confirming that, but I did want to keep the test with more of a similar bullet. If I do a retest on this, I'll have to just use the deep curl hollow point in the Gold Dot because that particular bullet just doesn't hold up. The 10mm did an excellent job here. So comparing these two, again, it's not a fair test. I would say that you definitely have better loads for a 4-inch barrel. Recoil was kind of low, but it wasn't significantly low. Recoil was still kind of low with this 10mm, and it did a really good job. So this really, in a sense, isn't a versus test, one caliber versus another, which one's better, because this is not going to be the true representation of these two cartridges. Very, very low on the power scale for 357 Magnum, and slightly low on the power scale for this 10mm. So these are definitely not ones to compare and make a judgment of the whole caliber series between the two of these. But that's what you get today with the Gold Dot ammunition and 10mm versus 357 Magnum. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.